The following content is provided under a Creative Commons license. Your support will help MIT OpenCourseware continue to offer high-quality educational resources for free. To make a donation or view additional materials from hundreds of MIT courses, visit MIT OpenCourseware at ocw.mit.edu.
So today I want to talk with you about how it is that we can do research of a scientific kind for something as complex as human behavior. As opposed to things that you measure out in space or test tubes or under microscopes. People are complex organisms, right? And so to do research on them, to understand human nature, how the mind works, how the brain supports it, is a challenging story. So the usual thing is an experiment. You have a group of participants, and we'll talk about that. But in the reading for today, and I know for the first time we've done this, so you may not have read it, but if you have, that'd be great, is a kind of another thread of the kind of way that people are studied, which is dramatic individual stories, case studies, single stories that are illustrative of something that we think are broader principles. And a lot of our biggest discoveries, and we'll come to that later in the course, have been made on very unusual single individuals who turn out to have a lesson that's pretty broad, for example, for the organization of the human brain. So in the Oliver Sacks book, there's a story about Donald. And what did Donald do that got him in big trouble? Yeah, he murdered his girlfriend while he was on PCP. He's in a psychiatric hospital. They try hypnosis to help him remember it. He says he doesn't remember it. Many of you may know that an astounding number of criminals under interrogation tell you they don't remember anything about the episode involved, right? So people are suspicious at first for many reasons, because the easiest thing to say is, I don't remember what happened, and then you can't catch yourself in a lie or any complexity, right? Because you don't remember what happened. And sometimes you don't remember, and sometimes you do. But in this case, they try hypnosis. That doesn't help. He's in there for 4 years. And then he knows conceptually that he murdered his girlfriend, and he says, I'm not fit for society. He knows it's a terrible thing he did, but it's kind of like an intellectual knowledge, right? It's not a feeling, it's not a memory. And then he goes biking and something happens, which is he gets hit by a car. So there's what appears to be a drug-induced amnesia of the original murderous episode. He gets hit by a car. He has a severe head injury. He's in a coma for 2 weeks. He has left-sided weakness as he comes out of it, which means the biggest injury was in the right side of his brain. Weakness and numbness. And he has frontal lobe contusions. He has injury and bleeding around the frontal lobes, the cortex that sits in the front of the brain. But now a remarkable thing happens. It's as if two insults, two wrongs made a right. The first wrong being the PCP, the second wrong being the accident, and now what happens? He remembers in vivid and florid detail the horror that he actually committed this murder. It's as if two insults to the brain, one drug-induced, one a focal injury, repress the memory and then unrepress the memory. And one of the first things they have to do is discover whether he really has this memory or he just thinks he has this memory. And how do they figure out, to their satisfaction, whether it's a really recovered memory or a fabrication of his mind? Right, that's really important. He remembers details of the murder that are not publicly available, that were not in the information that was given to him. That's a really huge issue in these kinds of memories. So there's a really recovered memory, not an inadvertently fabricated memory. And they discover he has deep seizure activity in his limbic structures. The parts of his brain that are involved in emotion are having seizures. So in epilepsy, neurons are firing for no good reason. And that's part of his disorder. They give him medications to help with that. But here's the question for you for a moment to think about. And it's now such a common question because our society is moving that way that it's on many TV shows. I see it like every couple of weeks. There's a Law and Order episode that has something like this, which is the more you know about the biology that underlies really criminal, terrible behavior, should that be a cause for understanding it or not? Okay, so in this case, he took the drugs, he killed the person, you think he's pretty responsible. But how about somebody who kills somebody, and it turns out, in such a case, a man with no history, a grown man with no history of criminal activity of any kind, shoved his wife out of a high window to her death in the course of a standard argument.